Strobe Studios presents Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger in The Watson Files. Coming to you from the illustrious Strobe Studios in the heart of America, this is Scott Strosahl. And now, let's join the doctor and see what story he has for us today.
Come in. Hello, Scott. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Just run a little behind.
Yes, I expected you a few minutes ago, but that's all right.
The freeway was all backed up. Some sort of accident or something.
I see.
I probably should have just taken the train instead.
Ah, it's funny you should mention that.
Why?
Well, I was actually planning to tell you a story that took place on a train this evening.
Really? But I thought we were finally going to get to the...
Yes, I know, but I'm afraid that's not going to be possible.
Why not?
Well, you recall how I was concerned a couple weeks ago that Holmes might not want me to tag along anymore?
Of course. I've been wanting to ask you about it, but I wasn't really sure how to bring it up.
Well, Holmes agreed to forgive me if I promised not to tell the rodeo clown story.
I see. Well, I'm glad to hear things are back to normal, and the train story does sound interesting.
Good. This particular story took place several years back when we were on the trail of a suspected serial killer.
Suspected? So you weren't sure if he was a serial killer?
You know, Holmes had a hunch. He had been following a string of murders in the news that didn't really have much in common, but... Well, actually, I'd better just start the story before I give away too many details.
Please proceed.
It had been several weeks since we'd had a case, and I had been filling my time by staying busy at the office. It was the flu season, but I stopped by Holmes's place on Saturday morning for breakfast. I found him sitting in his usual chair with his nose buried in the paper. So, anything of interest in that rag today?
As a matter of fact, there is, Watson.
Oh, do tell.
Well, I believe I may have stumbled onto something. What?
Oh, nothing. I was just thinking about your perpetual search for a motto. Spencer Holmes, I believe I may have stumbled onto something.
Yes, well, you make all the jokes you want, but in the meantime, I'm going to catch a serial killer.
I don't remember reading about any serial murders lately.
No, you wouldn't have. He hadn't been identified as such until just before you arrived.
I see. Would you care to elaborate?
Of course, have a look here.
Museum thief dies fleeing scene.
It seems the art museum was robbed yesterday.
Yes, I heard about this. The thief was in a car accident shortly after making his escape. Quite peculiar.
Indeed.
And they didn't find the missing painting, but it doesn't sound like murder.
It most certainly does not, and that's the point.
I'm afraid you've lost me.
Think about it from the killer's perspective, Watson. What's the best way to cover up a crime?
Well, you make it look like an accident.
Exactly.
But how did he know the victim was going to rob the museum? Are you thinking it was an accomplice, or did he put him up to it, or what?
No, I believe the killer was the thief.
And you've lost me again.
All right, fine. Let's assume the thief was just unlucky. Explain these.
What is all this?
There are more than 30 cases here all across the country.
Okay.
In every single one, a crime was committed, and then the perpetrator died within 24 hours.
Well, yes, that is curious.
There are suicides, car accidents, a few were supposedly killed by accomplices, one drowned while being pursued by a K9 unit. But the coup de grace is the map.
The map?
Yes, I've plotted out all of the deaths and connected them in order.
Whoa.
Now, do you believe me?
Well, this is definitely a pattern.
Indeed.
So, what is this guy? Some sort of vigilante going around taking out criminals or something?
No, it's much more clever than that, Watson. Take a look at all of the victims. Notice anything?
Well, there is a passing resemblance, but I see various hair and eye colors.
Both easy to alter.
Sure, but what does that matter? The killer is a vigilante with a type?
No, Watson, you said earlier that the best way to cover up a murder was to make it look like an accident. But what's the best way to get away with robbery?
I suppose not letting anyone know a robbery happened.
That's not bad, but not always possible. Even better is making the police believe the perpetrator has been caught.
So you're saying he forces them to commit the crime for him and then kills them?
No, that's too risky. Some of these thefts were very skillfully executed.
Wait a minute, you mean Are you thinking these people were killed before they committed the crimes?
Now you've got it.
So, he finds someone who looks roughly like him, kills them, robs a museum or a bank or something, and then leaves the body for the police to find, and then nobody is looking for it.
Clever, isn't it?
Clever? It's brilliant.
Indeed.
But how'd you piece it together?
Well, it was you that got the ball rolling, actually.
Me?
Yes, I happened to catch one of your programs the other day. The story was rather interesting.
I didn't realize you listened to the program.
Yes, well, I like to ensure you're getting the important details right, but you mentioned that most criminals get what they deserve in the end.
I recall saying something along those lines, yes.
Well, that reminded me of several of these cases, and I reflected on how some get their comeuppance rather quickly. Well, I decided to do some research on the matter, and when I uncovered so many recent cases, I began to get suspicious.
Well, I'm glad I could help.
And take a look at this. I had Weathers send over the security footage from the time of the robbery. See, there's that thief entering the building.
Okay.
He pays his entry fee with a credit card.
Not a smart move if you're going to rob the place.
True, but being dumb doesn't make you innocent. Notice how he signs his receipt, though.
I can't really see it.
You can in the reflection off the window.
Yes, sort of.
Good enough to see that he is left-handed.
He looks right-handed, but since a reflection in the window, yes, he's left-handed.
But the man who died in the subsequent automobile accident was right-handed.
All right, so what's the plan then?
We catch him.
Well, of course. But where do we start?
The train.
What train?
Look at the map. All of the previous murders happened in towns along the Amtrak rail line.
And you think he'll be on this morning's train?
If it were you, wouldn't you get out of town as soon as possible?
Probably.
The last murder was 2 weeks ago up in Greenville. According to his pattern, he should be heading south, and there's only one train a day to Springfield.
Well, what are we waiting for then?
I was waiting for you to catch up.
So, assuming the culprit is on the train, how do we find him?
Well, I imagine we just look for someone who resembles the previous victims.
But if he is good with disguises, then...
Indeed, Watson.
What about that man over there?
Perhaps, but he...
Or that one? Or perhaps the homeless-looking fellow sneaking into the luggage car?
All right, so we clearly have some work to do. Quickly, Watson, we'd better get tickets before we get left behind.
Indeed. So, Holmes, whom do we talk to first?
This U.S. Marshal here, I think.
How did you know who I was?
I believe there may be a serial killer on the train, and I may need your help in finding him.
And you are?
Spencer Holmes.
He may have stumbled onto something.
What?
Ignore him. We are consultants with the police.
Okay, and what do you need me to do?
Nothing at the moment. We'll do some investigating and let you know if we require assistance.
All right, whatever.
Any luck, Watson?
Not at all. You?
No, he seems to have disappeared.
Perhaps he jumped off the train before it left the station.
We did see him board the baggage car. Perhaps he was simply a thief.
So, shall we question some of the other men?
Yes, I suppose so.
What was that?
I'm not sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be having some engine trouble. Hopefully it will just be a short delay. We ask that everyone stay on board, and we apologize for the inconvenience.
That's odd.
Indeed.
So, we were stuck in the middle of nowhere on a damaged train with a potential serial killer that we had yet to identify.
That is quite the predicament.
I know. But I'll have to save the rest for next week, I'm afraid.
You can't leave me hanging like that.
Sorry, Scott.
Can you at least give me a hint?
Certainly. The killer is on the train.
Thanks, that was real helpful. Tonight's Watson Files adventure was written by Scott Strosahl. Spencer Holmes and Dr. Watson were played by Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger. Additional voices were provided by Steve Rimpici. Until next week, this is Scott Strosahl saying good night from Stroby Studios.
Of course, have a look here.
This is how I read the paper.
But the coup de grace is... No. The coup de grace is this... No. But the coup de grace is this... But the coup de grace is... God bless it. Why can't I say the map?
I don't know.
Very difficult.
But the coup de grace is the map.
Well, this is definitely a pattern.
Indeed.
If only you could see it out there in Radioland. You would be amazed. So, assuming the culprit is on the train, how do we find him? He'll be the one carrying the dead body?
You can't leave me hanging like that.
Sorry, Scott. Have you never listened to this show before?
Apparently not. I was just trying to think of how else I can pause to make it weird.
You could do it like this. You could always go with, in the Watson Files.
Stroby Studios presents The Watson Files, starring Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger. And the whole universe explodes.
You know what? I less like it. I like it less.
So bizarre. I hate it. Never do it again.
Coming to you from the Illustrated Stroby Studios in America's heart, this is Scott Strosahl.
Really?
Illustrated.
In America's heart. Wow.
And now, let's join the doctor and see what story he has for us today.
Walk inside my door. Come in.
This complete odd episode, or everything is slightly different.